Hi, I'm Adam Levy, and this is Guitar Tips right here on YouTube. As you may know, I've been doing a mini series within the Guitar Tips series, working my way through the alphabet. It's called the ABCs of Guitar Tips. I've created a playlist, so if this is the first episode in that series that you're seeing, check out the ABCs of Guitar Tips playlist, and you can start at A and work your way forward, or go in any order that you like, but they'll all be there, including this one. Now, this episode is going to be something that starts with R, so I've been thinking about it. Thought about talking about rhythm, but it's hard to talk about rhythm. It's really broad, depending on what you're into. Rhythm could be so many things, but I'll just say this: work on your rhythm. Even if you've been working on it, work on it some more. Any kind of technical thing you're doing with this hand or this hand needs to be on a strong rhythmic foundation. Anything that you're doing chordally, melodically, basically anything that you're doing on the guitar needs to have a strong rhythmic foundation. So make that an essential part of your practice. I can't say more than that because I don't know what style you're into. I don't know what level you're at, but work on your rhythm. But that's not what this tip is about. I also thought about R for recording, as in record yourself. It's really important as you're practicing and developing to record yourself and then listen back and give yourself some honest feedback. It's easy when you're playing to get caught up in how it feels. You might feel good or bad or anxious or happy or any number of adjectives, ways that you might feel. And that's good. Be in touch with your feelings. But it's really, really important to take stock of what you actually sound like. Not just what it feels like in the moment to you, but what it sounds like in the ears of other people. And really, although you can't get inside other people's ears or heads or whatever, the closest that you can do is to record yourself at a practicing, at a rehearsal, at a gig or whatever, and then listen back and see what it actually sounds like, and try and listen, not as the person who played it, but just as a listener. So that's really valuable. But that's also not what this tip is about. The thing that I thought would make the most sense to share with you here for the letter R episode is an episode that I did for Guitar Tips Pro a few weeks ago. It's called Reduce, Reuse, Recycle. It's about taking a few chord shapes and using them in many different ways, rather than getting obsessed with, I've got to learn more chords, I've got to learn more ways to play C minor 7 or A major 7. There's so many inversions and so many different ways. That's all true. You could learn a lot of different ways to play those chords. But another way to spin that is to take a few shapes that sound good to you, just intervallically sound good. 2 or 3 or 4 notes, the way they stack together sounds good. How many different ways can you recontextualize those as a new kind of chord? A voicing that works for C major 7, for example, might also be really useful as A minor 7 or as F major 7 or some other thing like that. So this episode is about that. Of course, reduce, reuse, recycle could also be about melody. If you take a little melodic fragment that sounds major, could you recontextualize it in a minor setting? If you take a little rhythm idea, could you recontextualize it by moving it over one beat or reshaping it in some way? So that's really what it's about. Instead of getting hung up on there's an infinite number of things to know, it's more about knowing what you know right now. Can you discover some new things to do with what you already know? Things that you have muscle memory for and things that you have ears for. You need to engage your imagination to think of new ways to use those things, to reduce, reuse, and recycle. And of course, I am reducing, reusing, and recycling by sharing this tip with you because it's something that I've already created. I created it for Guitar Tips Pro. If you don't know about Guitar Tips Pro, I'll put a link to it down below, or if you're good at typing, you can type it into your browser, guitartipspro.com. It is a subscription channel. It's on the face of it, it seems similar to what I'm doing here on YouTube, but it's actually deeper than that. Most of the tips that I do on Guitar Tips Pro, I go a little farther into the subject because I presume that the people that are there want a deeper dive, not just a quick YouTube video, but something that will really give them something to work on for a while. Many of the tips there have PDFs that I've created so that you can look at the music, or some of them have jam tracks I've created that you can play along with. There's lots of extra stuff there that I share, cool lessons that I find elsewhere on YouTube or on Patreon that I'll share. Cool live performances that I think you can learn from. I've had many guest tips, Molly Miller, Mason Stoops, Ariel Posen, Joshua Ray Gooch, Emily Elbert, Xander Schloss. Lots of really great guitar players talking about stuff from a different angle than where I'm coming from, but stuff that I think you can really learn a lot from. At certain tiers, you can get lessons with me through the Patreon subscription. Unique playlists that I create that are only for Guitar Tips Pro. Other lessons, just, sometimes between the official Guitar Tips Pro lessons, I'll just have an idea for something that I want to share, and I'll throw that up there. So there's a lot more going on, and there's also more engagement. I do answer questions here on YouTube, but I go to Guitar Tips Pro first when it comes to answering questions from people who are subscribed. And also, as far as where I go with the channel, things that I talk about in future episodes, a lot of that is shaped by the questions and comments that I get from people who are subscribers. So if that sounds good to you, if that sounds valuable to you, click the link below to learn more, or if you feel like typing, type in guitartipspro.com and that will take you right there. Okay, without further ado, here is Reduce, Reuse, Recycle. Guitar tips, guitar tips, just the tips just for you. Hello and welcome to another episode of Guitar Tips Pro. My name's Adam Levy. This is my video blog series right here on Patreon. In this episode, I'm going to teach you how to play a tune of mine called Out of Harm's Way. It's an instrumental tune. Actually, this week's theme song was kind of a paraphrase of that. The reason that I want to talk about this tune is that it uses a concept, a harmony concept that I'm kind of using all of the time, especially when I'm playing anything jazzy. And I call it reduce, reuse, recycle. And what that means is, it's tempting to think that if you want to play jazz, that you need to learn just so many chord voicings. There's major chords and minor chords and diminished chords and half diminished chords and all kinds of alterations and extensions. And well, that's true. You could really study that stuff for your whole life. An approach that has worked for me is to find grips that sound good and feel good to play, and work out how many different ways I can use those. Rather than learning 10 grips, I might learn one and see if I can find 10 different ways to use it. So a really simple example, this is just you might say, well, that's an A minor triad. That's nothing too jazzy about that. Well, it really depends on how you're thinking of it. If you're thinking of it as an A minor chord, no, it's not particularly colorful. But I also think of this as part of an F major 7. So I might just play that as, if the chord symbol says F major 7, instead of playing the whole thing, I might just play that. Or I might play that as the upper part of a D minor chord, which gives us the 9, which is a nice sound, and it doesn't have a third in it. So if the bass player plays D and I play that, in my mind it's D minor 9, even though I'm leaving out the third and the root. So it's starting to climb the ladder a little bit and get farther away from the fundamental tones and just to be more colorful. I might also think of this as F sharp half diminished. Right? I might think of this as G sharp 7 altered, in which case it would be that's the third, that's the flat 13 and the flat 9. So see what I mean? And could go on. So, and that's a pretty conventional grip. What if we get something like this, which you can't just name that as a simple triad. Already it's an unusual chord. And again, to me that could be some kind of C, could be some kind of A, could be some kind of G. And just depending on your taste, it could be almost anything. Here, I'll try it as E flat. I don't even know what that's going to sound like. It's kind of cool. I wouldn't know what to call it, but we could figure it out if we sat and analyzed it. So, my tune Out of Harm's Way uses not really any of those shapes, but just a couple of shapes, and uses them over and over again in different ways. Like the first chord that you hear is this. No really easy conventional name for what that is. I think of it just intervallically. That's a major second and that's a perfect fourth. So that's how I think of that. It's a 2 and a 4. But the first chord really, because there's C in the bass, it becomes something else. It's got the third and the 7 of C major 7, and it's also got the flat 5 or sharp 11 in it. And then the second chord, it just moves the same grip down a half step, but then A is the root. So before I get too far into it, I'll just say that that's one of the grips I use throughout this tune. Another grip is this augmented triad shape. Get a lot of mileage out of that. And then another one is this descending thing. Well, the other things I've talked about, the grip doesn't change, just the root note changes. Here the grip actually does change, but the interval structure stays the same. So this is a third and a second. And if we go down the scale, the actual physical grips are going to change slightly, but it's still some kind of third on the bottom. This is a minor third, and that's a major second. And we're in the key of C, so as we move down, just by staying within the key, like this is D, F, G, this is C, E, F, so now that's a major third and a minor second, minor third, major second, and so on. So it's not quite the same, but it's the same structure. Third on the bottom, second on top. So those are the grips that I use throughout this tune. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the first 8 bars of the tune, and you can hear what this stuff sounds like in context, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. I go C, it's like a C major 7 type of chord, and then then this becomes an A7 altered. It's got flat 5, sharp 5, or flat 13 you could say, and flat 9. So, and then this is just kind of a D9 voicing, and then D7 flat 5. So this is like an F major 7, but and there's an A flat in the bass. And this looks like D minor, but I'm thinking of it as G9 because the bass movement. And then this is just an F minor triad. So I didn't mention this, but there's also just a lot of triads in this tune, but again used in slightly disguised ways. It's F minor, but in the tune it's really acting as the upper part of a D flat major 7. So again, that's the first 4 bars. If you're in one of the upper tiers here on Patreon, you will have a PDF and you can look at all the stuff I'm playing. Otherwise, just watch closely and I'll try to explain as best as I can what I'm doing. But if you're in the upper tiers, make sure you download the PDF so you can actually follow along that way. And then D minor 7, this is a pretty not D minor 7-y, D minor 7, but I think of this as D minor 7 kind of in motion, and then it becomes whole tone. So your ear is going to hear that more as D7 or D9 or D augmented with a 9, but I think of it as D minor 7. Composer wise, I think of it as a D minor 7, and when I improvise on this tune in that moment it's D minor 7. But if you were just looking at this, it's more D dominant than minor in what's really going on. And then when it goes to G7, same structure, all whole tone. So, and this is just plain old C, first inversion C. And then F minor, remember we did that F minor as D flat major 7. Now it's F minor as an E7 altered. It's got the flat 9 and the flat 13. And then an E minor triad as the upper part of the F major 7. And then a D minor triad. So that's thinking about F and using E minor and D minor. And now here's this descending thing that I showed you before. And then this is an augmented triad, which brings back the thing that we had before with all this stuff. So really, this is a grip, this is a grip, the augmented shape, this is a thing, and then some minor triads. Pretty limited vocabulary grip-wise, right? So now let's look at the next 8 measures. Starts with the same voicing up top, but now A is the root, and then when it goes down a half step, G flat is the root. So listen to that. So before we're going, now we're going, and then this grip becomes part of goes down another half step and becomes part of an F major chord. Sorry. And then it becomes part of an A flat chord. So this is the B section. There it is. And now some other stuff. So it's B minor 7 flat 5 with an A triad. E7, but it's as a C triad. And then this shape is kind of related to this stuff in that it's a third on the bottom and a second on top. and then the same exact climb up. And now an E triad with C in the bass, and this little G flat 9 with a flat 5. It's a lot of information. I know. I could see some of you like rolling your eyes or just stopping watching this video because it's a lot. But I hope you can at least, before you phase out here, get the idea of what I'm doing. I'm using, as a composer and also just as a guitar player, I'm trying to use limited materials to get as much as I can out of it, rather than thinking I need more resources, I need more chord voicings, I need more whatever. Don't be afraid to use grips that sound good to you in some different ways, and don't be afraid to repeat sections of a tune. It's kind of cut and paste a little bit here. So here's the whole first 16 bars. 3, 4. As a C chord with a C major 7 sharp 5, and then this G flat dominant with a 9 and a flat 5. Now I'll play the bridge section, which moves pretty differently. Instead of these kind of grippy things, it's more counterpoint. There's just two melodies that sometimes they move in parallel, sometimes they move in different ways. I'll play it and you'll hear what that sounds like. 1, 2, 3, 4. What all that stuff is, I don't know. I could try to explain it, but to be honest, when I wrote it, I wrote this upper melody. And then the second melody, I just tried to hear stuff that would be chromatic, but kind of go slightly outside and then come back towards the basic harmony that I was trying to convey. I had been listening to a lot of Duke Ellington and Billy Strayhorn and a little bit of Monk when I wrote this, so I tried to use some of those devices that those composers might use, or something that you might write if you were writing for a little jazz orchestra rather than a guitar part. And on the A flat chord, and it's really just this. Underneath that, there's a chromatic line. So the whole thing together. And then this moves kind of just in thirds, even though this now implies a diminished sound on the A flat. It comes back. Yeah, it's hard to analyze that because I was really just I wrote the upper melody and then I tried to write a lower melody that sounded interesting. Wasn't using any kind of system or rules there, just what I could hear. Then the last section is similar to the first section. We go back to these kind of sounds. First ending goes E7, A7, D7, and then you go back to the top and you can improvise. At the end of the tune, when we get to that last section, there's a slightly different ending. So same voice that we used at the top and use it in some different ways. So that's F major 7 with that grip, A flat major 7, same grip. Then the bass note goes up to A, but the grip goes down. So we go, and then another little sort of triad over a root. So that's E flat dominant 7, but expressed as F triad over E flat. And so that ends as kind of a 2-5-1. So I know I'm kind of glossing over a lot of stuff. I'm not. This would be a very, very, very epic episode if I broke down all the rules of jazz harmony and why stuff works or sounds the way it does. But what I hope you'll do, just as a takeaway, is to use the idea of this, even if you don't learn to play this tune note for note. Just think about, what little chord things sound good to your ear. Just put your fingers down on 3 notes. Maybe start with 3 notes from a key. So let's say we're in A. So I'll just grab, these are 3 notes from the key of A, E, C sharp, B. But by itself, it doesn't really sound exactly like an A something, or it could be almost anything if you just try different root notes under it. So how many different ways could you use that? Find out. Let's pick another 3 notes from A. Here's C sharp, F sharp, and B. C sharp, F sharp, B. That could be A. Could be an E thing. If you want to try something more unusual, it could be an F thing. Flat thing. Oh, that's lovely. That's completely surprised me. So I would do that kind of work. Find grips that sound good to your ears and feel good in your hands, and see how many different ways you can use them, and then write a tune, and then do it again, and then do it again, and then what you'll find is well, great. Now you've got tunes you can play with, with musicians that you like to play with, or maybe it's a solo guitar thing. And you have really, once you've put these things that you discover into a tune, it's really going to stay with you. It's going to become a more permanent part of your vocabulary rather than just this one, thing that you discover that you only know how to play in one key, in one sort of way. So that's the big idea. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Go ahead, say it. It's nice. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Yeah, try it out. Until next time, here in Los Angeles, I'm Adam Levy for Guitar Tips Pro. Stay tuned and take good care.